What's the creepiest true story you have, or one someone has told you? I've already posted one, but I didn't want to put two stories in one post. But here you go. This one is from a teacher of mine. Great guy, but he swears on his pride that this one is true. It was during his college days. He was living in an apartment with 3 other guys. They had been living there for a couple weeks when weird stuff started to happen. It all started in one of the bedrooms. The bed was on a huge wrought iron bed frame and was in front of a wall outlet. This was the outlet that the bedside light had to be plugged into. Every so often, the lamp cord would be unplugged and thrown out of place. He thought it was just his friends being clever. Emphasis on the plural, because this thing was heavy. Weird things happened for the next couple weeks, but it was an older apartment and neighbors will be neighbors, and old buildings have their quirks, so they wrote it off as nothing. One night, they had some friends come over, so one of them had to sleep in the futon in the living room. The friend was woken up in the middle of the night for no real reason, but when he opened his eyes, there was a thin blonde girl hunched on the ground next to him. Now, not much can make a 6'4" 250 pounds tough guy panic, but this did. He just stared, hollering and yelping for his friends to come out as he grabbed for every square inch of the sheets. His friends thought he was just messing with them, but his face said otherwise. They just hung out for the rest of the night till he calmed down. They eventually ordered pizza, just because they were no longer tired. When the delivery guy got there, he was surprised. "Hey, this was my old place when I was in school." My teacher chuckled. "Hey, did weird things happen when you lived here?" The pizza guy went blank. "Oh, Flurbo, you've seen her too?" They moved out the next day. My 4-year-old daughter was supposedly asleep when I heard noises coming from her upstairs bedroom. I tried to listen but could not make out what was being said. I approached the room and she stopped talking. Thinking I alarmed her, I went into the room. At the time, she was sharing it with her 3-year-old sister. I walked in and saw the 4-year-old sitting up in bed. I smiled and said, "Is everything okay?" She said fine, but her sister said they were keeping her up. I asked who. My 4-year-old said sorry, but that she was talking. When I asked her who she was talking to, my 3-year-old sat up and said, "The girl in the window. She said you were coming." After I pooped a brick, I asked who the girl was, and they both said a girl comes and stands in front of the window at night and talks to them. Not knowing what to say, I said okay, tucked them in and hung around outside their door. The next day, I asked about the girl. They said she came back but was mad. I waited a few days and asked again. My 4-year-old said the girl in the window was still mad. I forgot about it for about a week when my wife said, "Who are the girls talking to upstairs?" Freaked out, I ran upstairs and both girls were sitting under the window looking up. They turned and looked at me and asked if I wanted to meet the girl. When they turned around, disappointed, they said the girl left. It has been about 5 years since, and I have not heard about the girl in the window since then. My mom has loads of stories about kids and ghosts. She works in a pediatrics ward here in our local hospital, Oma, UK. Once, while working night shift, she heard giggling noises coming from the playpen area of the ward. She was by herself and understandably, she was very freaked out. During the night, she figured out, or she thought she did, that the noise she kept hearing must have been from one of the toys, dolls, robots, stuffed animals in the playpen. Anyway, she tried her best to ignore the noise and hours later, fell asleep despite being so freaked out. When she woke up the next morning, she decided to figure out what the heck had happened. She played with all the toys in the ward trying to extract every noise she could from them. Not one matched the laughing noise she heard the night before. I am the oldest of 3. Me, my younger brother and my younger sister. We had just moved into this house. Probably about a year into living there, I had mixed feelings about the place. I had strange dreams all the time regarding the woods behind it and parts of the basement. My brother and sister shared a room upstairs. One evening, I was playing some sweet N64 games and my brother and sister, had to be roughly 7 to 9 years old at the time, let out this ridiculous scream. Not quite blood-curdling, but admittedly genuine. I.e., not playful kid screams. Kids scared fleebless screams. I ran back to see WTF was going on. It's dark outside and they were playing in their room at the time of the scream. They said they saw a face in their window and were scared. The window was actually kind of a weird window because it was wider than it was tall by a large amount. Like a 2-foot tall by 4 to 5 foot wide window. These windows were at the near top of the room too. A good 5 feet off of the floor. I settled them down, then they came out in the living room with me. We had a lot of windows in this house, so I looked out at all of them looking for creepers in the dark, and surely, I see nothing. My little brother describes the face as smiling, belonging to a male. A huge grinning smile, like a clown-shaped smile, but all mouth, not red paint. Sharp facial features and pale gray skin. Fast forward about 7 to 8 years. We are living in a new house. I don't get weird feelings about this house. Me and my younger brother now share a room. I am just starting tech school and he is in high school. I usually went to bed later than him. He had a habit of sitting up and talking to me while he was sleeping, sleepwalker. He would always say the most random things too. Talking about turkeys, volleyball, etc. One night he sits up, and it was always kind of eerie cause, when he sleepwalks talks, he is awake, but you can see in his eyes he is asleep. He is staring at this chair in the corner of the room, then he stares at me. He says something to the effect of, "The man with the clown face is sitting in the chair." I get a little creeped out. I figure he is dreaming it. I tell him to go to sleep, he is all ready. He sits and stares blankly at the chair in the room, and then lays back down. I finally go to bed. Now this stuff is giving me goosebumps and the shakes pretty bad. After this event, I never ever want to see what I saw again. I wake up in the middle of that night. For some random reason, my brother is up too, in his usual sleepwalk talk mode, staring at the chair. I look over, and my heart fleabing stops. A chill shoots through my fleabing body like I've never felt, and I'm frozen for a good second or two. Absolute fleabing terror. I see this thing. Limbs are thin and slender. He would have been dressed in a business casual old type of attire. Everything about him is grayscale and pale. Clothes are dark. He is staring right the flurbo at me, grinning like a madman. I finally snap to after I realize he isn't going away, like a waking dream. I grab the shotgun next to my bed, rack around, look back, gone. Look at my brother, and he is lying down to go to sleep. I didn't sleep for a couple days after that, and I took the chair out of the room. Haven't seen him since. This happened probably 10 years ago. My parents had good friends that had 4 kids. 2 of them were young. One was 3 and the other was maybe a year and a half. Well, they moved into a house and within a few months, weird things started happening. The mom started noticing things being moved into different places. She thought it was her 3-year-old daughter, so she asked her one day if she had been taking things, and the daughter said no. She had this angel figurine up on a shelf where the daughter can't reach it. One day, she notices it is gone. She ends up finding it in her daughter's room. Fast forward a month or so. The wife and husband are in their room sleeping and are awoken by the 1-year-old screaming. They walk into the room and find the 3-year-old laughing to herself and pointing to the same corner that the 1-year-old is staring at while screaming. They ask the 3-year-old what she is laughing at. She says she is laughing at the funny thing in the corner where her stuffed animals are. They finally get the 1-year-old to sleep. The next night, they are sleeping and hear someone running up and down the hallway. They think it's the 3-year-old. They get up and check on their daughters, and they are both sound asleep. The next night, they hear the same thing, but with laughing accompanying it. The running stops at their door and the handle starts to jiggle because they sleep with the door locked. They open up the door and no one is there. They check on their daughters and they are both asleep. The next night, they stay up and sure enough, it happens again. The husband gets to the door fast enough that when he opens the door, he sees the hallway closet door open and then shut by itself. He and his wife start praying at the door to cast out what they think is a demon. Halfway through, they hear something scream in the closet and a bright light come from inside the closet. They didn't have any problems after that night. So when I was 7, my family relocated from Florida to Texas. I was young, so obviously, I was getting underfoot a lot when my parents were trying to unpack and get things situated. They sent me to my room to play with my Barbies so I wouldn't get in the way. So it's cool, I'm playing with my Barbies minding my own business when all of a sudden, I get this strange feeling like I'm being watched. I'm sitting near the bed and the doors to my bedroom are on the opposite corner. I look up and between me and the doors, I see this little girl I'd estimate was probably around 7 to 9 years old, in full pioneer attire. She looks pissed, sad, and confused at the same time. I scream my head off bloody murder and my parents come running as she disappears. As I recount my story to my parents, they tell me it's all nonsense and due to my overactive imagination. This goes on for 4 years. My parents say it's nothing, it's not real, and hang a painting of Jesus over my bed, like that's supposed to help or make me feel better. Even as a kid, I didn't believe in God, so that also didn't help my perspective. I only saw her a handful of times, but more often than not when I was sleeping, or even worse, when I was showering, since the bathroom was just off my bedroom, I would feel this creepy sensation of someone watching me. We moved back to Florida when I was about 11, and for years, I knew what the truth was, but my parents vehemently denied it. Finally, I was about 17 or 18 in the car with my mom and mentioned it, saying I knew the rest of the family thought I was full of it, but I know for a fact she was there. My mom went real silent for a minute and then told me that she never came clean with me as a child since she knew that it wouldn't help me deal with it any better and she didn't have any way of explaining it, but she had seen her too and knew she was real. One particularly momentous occasion, she walked in my room to check on me at night and I was already asleep. Between me and her was this little girl and my mom gasped. The ghost turned around and looked at my mom and my mom said, "Go away." The little girl pouted and said, "No. You go away." And then vanished. My brother and I also were homeschooled for a few years and I did my work in the kitchen. My brother, being older, did his work in his bedroom. He told me years later that he would hear soft sobbing of a small child coming from my room when he knew I wasn't in there. If he opened the door to go in my room, the sound would stop. The sad thing is I wish I was making this up or hallucinating this. To this day about once or twice a year I have violent nightmares about returning to this house and having her exact her revenge on me or something. One of my greatest fears in life is returning to that house. Good thing it's half the country away.